Hello and welcome to Pathways. I am your host, Amber Stitt. And today we welcome Colin Sanburg to the show today. Welcome, Colin.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So you are the founder of FinElevate, and you help people in business. Well, you've been an entrepreneur for many years, but let's talk about what FinElevate does for people and for your clients.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. So, from my experience, like you said, I've been an entrepreneur for, 20 some odd years at this point. And knowing a lot of entrepreneurs coming up through that myself, I know how many entrepreneurs, almost all of them are good at sales and maybe they're good at the ops side of their business. But many of them have this, kind of skeleton hiding in the closet that is their finances. They just don't enjoy it. Maybe they're not math people. Yeah. And that's fine. That's natural. But it is, it's part of being a pro, right? It's part of being a legit entrepreneur. And so that's what we help. We like to say we're kind of the financial who behind some of these clients that we work with. And, that's a bit of a strategic coach reference, but in EOS, maybe it's like, hey, we help support the financial seat. But the idea is that we're someone else who has a seat at the table, not like from the perspective that a banker would, where they're just trying to get you in certain products, not from the standpoint that a CPA would, where they're more focused on helping, hopefully, save you money that you've already made. But we're actually helping figure out how to make more money for our clients. And that's really kind of what we're in it from the perspective of another business owner, which is what I really am first and foremost before I'm a finance guy.
So you started in the family business, and did that make you want to be an entrepreneur, or did it make you run like I did for a little while from the actual idea?
That's a great question. So I actually had a weird situation. I was in a job interview and I was 20 years old and I was waiting in a conference room and I actually read a magazine. It was an old Inc. magazine, which I used to read religiously for a long time after that. But it was the first time I'd ever come across Inc. magazine, and I learned about entrepreneurship, and it was just kind of like one of those things, the thunderbolt that hit me at that right moment in life. Kind of between things, I was trying to figure out who I was. And I just realized I'm going to be an entrepreneur. This is what I'm going to do. And so I looked around, and the person nearest me who was in that world was a family member. And so I went and said, hey, I'm going to come work for you for a year, and then I'm going to go do my own thing.
Oh, nice.
And 22 years later, I own that company and have for many, many years. So, that's just kind of funny how life works. But yeah, I went, that path. Now I will say, people ask me all the time because I'm in a multi-generation kind of environment, and I've got another partner who's a third generation business owner. And people always ask, what are you going to do when you have small children? Like, that's a natural question.
Yeah.
And I'm like, absolutely not. They can do anything in the world. They can do, and I'll help them. But I always just say it's one of those things where there's 1,000 ways to get it wrong and maybe one way to get it right. It's such a hard needle to thread to, do the family business thing and pull it off. People do, more power to them, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it as a good plan A.
Okay. So do you think that people are born into that entrepreneurial brain, or do you think it could be the experiences that can extract it from people?
That's a great question.
Well, I mean, because like family, you're like, okay, I'm not letting family members work in my company until they have some experience, because I'm not letting them cut their teeth on learning from me and then getting upset with me when I'm rigid and responsible, which I've heard that before.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, I love that old quote that says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Mm-hmm. And so I love that kind of concept. And I think that's true of like the entrepreneurial mindset and that sort of thing. And I think the challenge, to your point, when somebody says, hey, I'm going to have my kids in the business, that's just going to be how it is. It's like you haven't allowed them to develop that student mindset. And to me, that's a huge part. So I don't know if people are born with it. I know that for me, looking back on my life, I'm like, well, obviously I was going to be an entrepreneur. I was terrible student in school, didn't like everybody else's rules.
With us.
Yes,
we don't tell our kids that, but
no. Yeah. I finally have started telling my oldest, and he's 12 and he's a great student. Mom is an amazing student, top of her class. I was like bottom of the class. Now we both have very high expectations for our kids, but looking back, it makes all the sense in the world that I became an entrepreneur, but I think I didn't have the maturity and the things aligned until I was in my early 20s.
Yeah.
And that's when it finally kind of clicked into gear. And it almost, frankly, for me personally, felt like I was kind of going down this path of being a little bit of a loser. And I was like, this doesn't feel like me, but it don't feel like I fit, in the old model.
Yeah. It's like, I got to go above and beyond here. Yeah, that's funny that in insurance planning, let's just say if I go to conferences and I'm hanging out with other planners or whatever they do, their kids never want to do financial services. That's not fun. And maybe same for your industry too. If they just see what it could be, it's not as glamorous. So you want them to approach it in their own way if they're truly interested. And I want my daughter to be around it just to get acclimated and see where she could plug in. But I always talk about focusing on talents, and not everyone loves that industry. So maybe they shouldn't be in the business, but they should be happy with what they're doing, or at least get the experience, and then they can come in if it makes sense. But yeah, giving them that chance to see if that's something that they want.
Yep.
So then I've heard you say 20, 22 years. I wasn't going to ask if you're about my age. I don't know. I think I might be older than you. Now, when did you go back for the executive education level that you did?
Yeah. So I was 26, about to be 27. I'd been in the family business for about 5 years. And I basically decided, I'd gone through, the company originally was a turnaround. It was a really rough situation. So I came into the family business knowing nothing about anything. They were struggling from a financial standpoint. Again, I had no financial background, but I kind of liked math. I liked the basics of math. Mm-hmm. And so I just gravitated to that part of the business, immediately took a look under the hood and was like, wow, this is a disaster. Like, this is really scary. I don't know anything about what it should look like, but I know this can't be right. And so as I kind of navigated the first few of those, really just saying like, this can't be right. What would better look like? And getting a mentor, getting into some mastermind groups, sort of kind of painting a bigger picture for myself of what I thought was possible. And what I ultimately wanted to do with my MBA was to learn what big companies had figured out. I mean, I knew that no small business is going to make it to be a medium or big business if they haven't figured out the financial side of their business. And so if I could go learn kind of what was really best, bring that back and distill it down into a small business environment, that it would give me a huge edge. And so that's what I did.
You've referred to strategic coach. Do you guys actually implement that as a framework, EOS, or combination?
Yeah. So I'm in strategic coach. So is one of my business partners. I'm trying to get the other business partner to join, but I love strategic coach. Strategic coach helps a business owner with, I would say, their mindset around kind of what their role is, understanding exactly like you're talking about. It's okay to play to your strengths. It's just not okay to play to your strengths and not build an organization that compensates for your weaknesses. And so if you're just doing one of those without the other, you're really
hiring a bunch of you. It's so much fun.
Exactly. Yeah. Or a bunch of people who will just sit around and kind of like tolerate you and your own particular brand of crazy. We all have that, right? And so that's what I love about strategic coach. But I always joke that strategic coach is like, the perfect fit. They're creating more EOS companies every day because they're telling all these, entrepreneurs like, hey, your brand of crazy is special and that's great. And it is, but EOS is the framework for the company that helps, the stability and helps the rest of the team engage. And so I love them as a compliment. And we're a huge fan of both.
Well, you're a perfect guest, I feel, for our show because I am a big advocate on people taking action, participating, investing in their own lives, having the ability to build a framework to have resilience in life as we have curveballs that can come our way, but really going and heading towards financial freedom. There's 5 steps in my framework. The ending is focusing on community. I kind of want to start there with you at this point, because I feel that you have said before, there's businesses that have come out of the ability to work with other people and strategic partner, not because of the framework, but can you speak to that? Because I feel that that's helped you build other business and real estate opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. So, to your point, and I know you call it community, I've always been in mastermind groups, right? Which is another form of the same thing. And so that was one of the things that really changed my life. When I was 23 years old, I got introduced to a mastermind group. I went into a group. I was half the age or less than some of the people in the group and felt really kind of inadequate and like I didn't really belong. And so I tried to keep up by being, incredibly eager, working really hard to learn. When somebody would tell me about a book and we came back a month later, I'd read the book. I wanted to talk to them about the book, and so I took on that attitude of like I had something to prove. But that was my mindset at 23. What I now realize looking up is that we all need to be supported by that community. Like you said, we need to have an environment of people who have similar thoughts and similar mindsets to us. And we need to hold each other accountable and push each other around what's possible and not just collectively what's possible for each of us to become and to grow. Right. And so I love that. And to your point, so one of my partnerships that I have came from, really both of them one came directly from a mastermind group. In other words, another member of a mastermind group. I was advising on the side, going through some similar challenges that I'd already been down in my first company. And we ended up partnering together. And that's my partner in the cabinet. It's a cabinet manufacturing business.
That's so interesting. It can be anything.
It could
And
be
you don't
anything.
have to physically show up to that. But if you are both interested in building something out, that can happen with anyone, really anywhere in the globe these days.
Absolutely. And that's where I just tell people, it doesn't matter where you are in your journey. It doesn't matter where you want to get to. It doesn't matter, if it's doing small business or whatever it is, get a group of peers. It could literally start with you and one other person, but start to kind of like create that. I mean, the mastermind group that I've had, I'm actually going to go to after this recording. I'm going to today. I formed it in 2008. In October of 2008, nice. Me and 3 other people, and we said, hey, we're going to do this and we're going to figure out what we are and we're going to grow it from there. And it's just a, real like band of brothers in terms of the commitment and the collective, belief in each other. And I mean, I've had literally gone home and had champagne when one of my mastermind friends had a big transaction.
And that's the key.
It's like, I wanted to celebrate. Yes.
Reciprocating. And it's interesting as I get older that I see sometimes it's the mastermind grouping that's more interested in your success than sometimes the closest people to you. And it's really mind boggling. And you just have to be, have that awareness, but build those pockets of pick your partner. You can't always pick your family, but like the friends group that you might have grown up with, always known. There could be a shift if somebody is just not in that brain space with you that just wants to grow and be open-minded and continue on. And
I love when people in that environment challenge you too, right? I mean, I always say like, hey, when someone gives me advice in a mastermind group, 1/3 of it I'm going to agree with. 1/3 of it I'm going to vehemently disagree with. And 1/3 of it's just going to have me scratching my head. And each of those provides value. And sometimes different members conflict with each other. And it gives me that really interesting perspective. But they all are just coming from a great place and want you to win. And that's really, really powerful.
And it can be rooting you on. And there's not always great days. So sometimes people are going to lift you up and give you that confidence boost. Not that you even knew you needed it. There's a mentorship happening. Now, did this grouping of people or different groups help you through any financial times that were tougher in business to get you out of anything specific that helped you grow?
Yeah. So for me, I've always been in most groups that I'm in kind of the financial guy, but we've definitely been there for each other in all those kind of areas. In fact, one of the things that led to my new business was when we went through COVID, everybody went through COVID. That group that's a monthly group, as I just said, we started talking weekly. And it was like, guys, this thing is moving too fast. Nobody knows what's happening. It's all rumors and hearsay.
Yeah.
And as an entrepreneur, you really have to manage your mindset. And I mean like the positivity and what you're thinking and what you're exposing yourself to. And so, we started doing that weekly. And that really, when the government was releasing like the details of PPP and what that was going to mean for everybody. And it was like, I found myself even outside of that mastermind group within my network of a lot of people coming to me just asking like, they knew I was a financial guy. What do you see? What are you thinking? What does this mean? How's it going to apply? And so it just kind of, planted the seed that I could do that beyond, just in my mastermind groups and really help people out with it.
So with your current business, let's talk about how are you helping clients really see a difference of how to participate in money within their business, accounting, et cetera. Let's touch on that and how you can help elevate their financials as the name states.
Yeah. So I love that, I know you're a big fan of structure and frameworks as well. Like I'm a huge framework person. And so what I've seen in the market is that some people might have like a fractional CFO, let's say, that's going to give them a bunch of big ideas and a list of things to do. Or maybe they've got a bookkeeper or even a tax person who, kind of has some ideas, but don't necessarily know how to make the rubber meet the road. I've tried to solve the same problem for my own businesses. What I discovered was that that's the gap, is that you have to have a plan that has a framework to how it's addressed, or else you just end up spinning your wheels and not going anywhere. And so our framework, we figure out what the goal of the entrepreneur is. And it's usually one of 4 goals. They either want to grow their business, they want to make more money in terms of profitability, they want to improve their cash flow, because if cash is a struggle, then nothing else matters, or they want to exit their business. And usually it's one of those first 3. And then it's the last one is kind of an ultimate goal. And so with that in hand, we do what we call the Fin score, which is basically a report card for your business. And it tells us based on your 4 goals, which of those goals are your priority, where you're at. Now, once we know what your goal is, we know where you're at, then the playbook is pretty obvious. And we've built a playbook that's over 450 different potential things you could do. And I think that's where people get overwhelmed, is like, well, if there's 450 things I could do, like, how do I even begin?
Yeah.
But again, that's why we have to start with that end in mind, and we build that framework. And then with that framework in place, the right next play kind of is dictated through the rest of the framework. And so that's what we do with companies. We help, implement those plays, help advise on those plays, help coach their team on how to look at the financial part of the business. And as that's happening, you start really moving these little small needles, and collectively the big needle starts to really shift.
You mentioned fractional CEO. This is something that's happening now. I see more than ever. And I had to pause and ask. There's a friend of mine that's doing evangelism. She calls herself the fractional evangelist, brand ambassador. Can you explain? I don't know that everyone really knows what a fractional CEO, CFO can be for somebody. Are you taking place of that role by working through the playbook?
Yeah. So to your point, I think that's becoming a very common trend, right? Is this fractional concept. And it is still it doesn't really quite mean anything yet. In general, what I think it means is that you've got a very high caliber person who's working only a portion of their time. So you're paying a lot, but not a ton, and you're getting a slice of this person. And so I've used that in my own businesses. We've got a great fractional COO, but in my mind, in a small business, and let's say a $15 million business and below, the bulk of the work that needs to be done in those businesses is kind of COO work. It's like managing the team, building out the systems, making sure that the trains are running on time. Everybody knows what their role is. Our marketing is clear. Those are all kind of COO tasks. And what I don't think makes a ton of sense is going and getting a really high powered financial mind who's going to come with this really big, complex, sophisticated concept. Frankly, the finances of a small business, they're not complicated. It's just hard work. Yeah. And so that's really what our playbook is intended to replace the need for that. Now, if you're going through an M&A transaction, if you're doing some sort of, major fundraising and that kind of thing, there might be a point to that high powered person. But in reality, you just need somebody who knows what needs to be done and is willing to, roll up their sleeves and get after it. And so for me, that's what I advocate for the financial side, for the business. And the CEO, the founder, is usually the big idea person. And the big idea person hopefully is helping rally the troops and get the market, but they're not going to be in the weeds doing the financial.
No, and they're not always leading the best they can, because I use a reference. The little balloon floats up into the sky. They come back down. The team's down here. And people are like, where did they go? Because they're having fun. It almost looks like too much fun, but no, that's part of the deal. They have to be creating those futuristic ideas. But that's where that, like you said, the COO, the playbooks can help keep everyone managed and happy and engaged. That's critical. And I think that's kind of what EOS does. EOS is almost like a COO framework for your visionary who's kind of, chasing the balloon or living like the balloon. And so the rest of the team has this kind of constant glue. And what we found, even from talking to a lot of different EOS implementers, is that the financial seat in the business is usually the most neglected. And that's really what we want to provide, is the support. And we can do that from the outside with our playbook and helping advise people. And they know their business. They just need to learn how it relates to the financial side and how to make it tick. So you've talked about money. Let's talk about how working with your team shines a light and has a focus more on keeping more money available to the business, efficiency with taxes and so on. How is that different than just working with the CPA? Yeah. So a CPA, I don't want to pick on a CPA. Ironically, my earliest mentor is my CPA, and he's a fantastic guy. He's pretty old school, but he really helped me shape my mindset. But the reality is 99.99% of CPAs are not wired around helping you make more money. In my experience, the really good ones are helping you save once you've already made a ton of money. Let's say you've got 7 figures worth of net income and you're trying to figure out how to save that money. They can help with that, the really good CPAs, but most of them are not there in February, in March, in August to help you improve the finances of your business. And so that's kind of the role that we like to play. And we want to coordinate with great CPAs and help implement. A lot of people go to their CPA once a year, twice a year, get a list of things they should be doing to get more tax efficient. And then they go back to living the rest of their life and they are selling and they're building their product and managing their team and forgot all about that list. And then it's like, oh shoot, I've got the meeting with the CPA next week and I've done none of those. Somewhere among the things. Yep. Yeah. So we're kind of in the business of helping make that happen. Is there anything that people really need to be focusing on just first and foremost? Is just everybody listening today, start here, if anything. There's so many, but I'll tell you the simplest one. Focus on your pricing. Okay.
no one wins by having low pricing. And I'll say that because the people listening to our show today, we're not running Amazon. This is not Walmart. We're not winning on a massive, billions of units model, and we'll just make a tiny sliver off of each. Those companies do that, and they almost trick small businesses into thinking that that's a reasonable model. The reality is we have to be premium price, and we have to learn how to justify and earn that premium price. And as we do that, it's amazing how much your life changes when you're in a more premium model. Because think about it. We're not only making money, everybody thinks about like, I'd be able to make more money if I raise my prices. You'd also be able to reinvest more. You also wouldn't feel the need to cut corners everywhere you turn to kind of keep your costs low. By no means am I saying don't keep your costs low, but
people
figure
don't have
out
the
where
volume.
the investment.
And the logistics to, like you said, keep the train on the tracks earlier. There's a huge system, almost like an airline system that's happening where there's so many pieces when it comes to Amazon. Establishing your worth, I think that if you go too low, people won't take you seriously either.
Exactly. And and it's been proven, right? There's been studies that prove that weirdly, as humans, we associate value with the price that's been assigned to the offer. So it's exactly what you're saying. The lower I price myself, the lower people think I'm worth. Yeah. Whether it's true or not, we don't even get to that point. The psychology's pretty locked in. So look at your pricing. That's one of the most immediate things you can do to improve your financial performance is to increase your prices.
Well, we have April looming. Are there any concepts that you're going to tee up and give people a little bit of a nibble on? These are things you need to be thinking about as a business owner. I know tax time's individually for, people earlier in the year, but you're talking about this as like a monthly checkpoint. What should people be thinking about? Any cool concepts to share? Yeah,
from a tax standpoint, it's just really understanding your write-offs. And what I tell people in most smaller firms is get your mind right about whether something's a business expense. There are ways to justify the business nature of something, but I see people fall into that trap before they're making a lot of money. Maybe they're starting to make good income, but it's not yet building the company. And they start going like, well, I could take this and I could do this. And it's a write-off, as if that makes it free.
They should just spend it because it's a write-off.
Making it a write-off is not free,
cracks me up. My husband might be one of them. Just a write-off. Well, do we need to spend those dollars?
Exactly. Really, again, I'm more focused on getting you to the point where you get 7 figures of income, that your great CPA is going to help get your effective tax rate as low as possible. That's more my mindset. And so the beginning of that path is we don't want to have lazy habits around how we spend money.
Yeah, I agree with that. And there's a bit of that with the financial institution mindset that we grow up with, that you just put money in accounts and then you just put it there and then let's just see what happens for later for retirement. And if you can understand money and taxes, there's more opportunities that we can do now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Participate in today.
Yeah. And so one of the things I do, I'll just advocate real quick for, is put those kind of owner's extras, we call them, put those in a separate category on your P&L. Do not keep those. So if there's a little bit mixed in with travel, there's a little bit mixed in with some sales costs, there's a little bit mixed in with meals, there's a little bit mixed in with, vehicle or whatever. Put those in one place and take a hard look at it like you would your personal budget, and just ask, like, am I getting the value out of these behaviors that are really justifying them? And if they are, and everything's great and your company's making great money, hey, no worries. By all means, you should do that. But I think when somebody goes, well, I'm just not able to make money, it's like the operating business isn't working. And then you take a deeper look and you're like, well, actually, it'd be making this if you weren't taking a bite at the apple every chance you got.
Let's just face it. Let's go to our Amazon and Target history and see if it's all necessary, but for
everyone
your business,
is guilty.
Similar.
Yeah.
Okay. So people can find you at, is it FinElevate.com?
That's correct. Yeah. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always on there. And so, reach out. And we like to offer, I'll hop on a call with you for 45 minutes. I'm not going to hard sell you. I'm not going to try and pitch you anything. We call it the deep dive 45. I'll take a look at your situation. I'll give you as much advice as I can come up with. We'll try and help you in a quick little box to hopefully put good karma out in the world. And, we know that we'll generate enough opportunities out of what we're trying to do. But just love helping people and connecting with entrepreneurs.
Do the right thing. It all works itself out.
There you go.
Awesome. Well, it's been great to hang out with you today. And I know our audience is probably thinking about money goals a little bit more with a magnifying glass. We're talking to you, everybody. All of us need to reflect, do the work, right?
That's right.
Okay. Well, thanks for being here again. Thanks to the listeners, and have a good day. Have fun at your mastermind.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Pathways. For more information about the podcast, books, articles, the blog, and so much more, please visit my website at amberstitt.com. And remember, Let's take action today. Thank you for listening.